Some visions are merely passing echoes of daily existence, but others unlock glimpses into what lies ahead. In 1999, an obscure artist in Japan released a peculiar manga that silently documented 15 prophetic visions she had experienced. One after another, these visions materialized into reality. The most chilling aspect remains that the final vision has yet to unfold. The publication claims it will manifest precisely at 5 a.m. on July 5th, 2025. What did that vision contain, and why has it tormented readers for more than 20 years? Let's explore this mystery in today's investigation. Prepare yourself as we delve into this extraordinary tale. Before we begin, if you enjoy this content and subscribe before the video concludes, legend says fortune might smile upon you. On July 1st, 1999, Japan witnessed the publication of an unusual comic book. Its title was understated, yet laden with quiet significance: The Future I Saw. Initially, virtually no one noticed its existence. There was little reason to do so. The work lacked visual appeal, wasn't created by any renowned artist, and received zero media promotion. Anyone who might have stumbled upon it would have discovered only a collection of strange visions rendered in pencil sketches, accompanied by scattered notes written in the margins. It appeared to be nothing more than an illustrated diary, a dream journal transformed into rough artwork, sometimes chaotic, sometimes obscure, and occasionally so enigmatic that interpretation seemed nearly impossible. However, more than 10 years later, on March 11th, 2011, Japan experienced a devastating earthquake and tsunami that obliterated the northeastern region. Over 15,000 lives were lost, tens of thousands vanished, and the world observed in horrified silence as a technologically advanced nation was consumed by the sea. During those days of chaos and terror, an astonishing revelation emerged, sending shockwaves through Japanese online communities. Someone recalled that long-forgotten comic book, and their discovery would leave the public astounded. 12 years earlier, within one of the visions recorded in pencil, the artist had illustrated a scene that remarkably mirrored the events of March 11th. Seawater inundating streets, tsunami waves surging inland, and mysterious numbers like 311 appearing on the book's cover, as though warning of something incomprehensible at the time of publication. The correlation was too precise, too detailed to dismiss. Thousands began searching for the comic, examining every page, every sketch, every marginal note, as if deciphering a message from the future. Soon, they discovered something even more incredible. The book contained a total of 15 prophetic visions, and according to readers' calculations, 12 and a half had already materialized. When The Future I Saw unexpectedly gained public attention following the 2011 disaster, the Japanese public's first question was, who created this work? Yet as attention focused on the creator, they received only a brief, ambiguous name: Tatsuki. This pseudonym came with no verifiable information. Her identity remained unknown. Even the publisher no longer maintained contact records for the book's creator. In an age where nearly all information can be traced effortlessly, the fact that someone could remain completely hidden for over 2 decades made everything feel even more enigmatic. As Tatsuki's name spread like wildfire, countless fraudulent accounts emerged across social media. Imposters claimed to be the genuine author, released new alleged prophetic visions, and plunged public opinion into turmoil. Some believed this was an elaborate hoax. Others suspected Tatsuki wasn't an individual, but an organization, or worse, a creation engineered by shadowy forces deliberately manipulating public belief. Then, in October 2023, just as fascination with the manga's prophecies reached another peak, Tatsuki suddenly returned. She did so by re-releasing the original book, this time with comprehensive details and explanations. The book, still titled The Future I Saw, was no longer merely a collection of brief visions, but had evolved into a thorough documentation of what she had witnessed, recorded, and carried throughout the years. In this return, Tatsuki revealed aspects of herself. She was born December 2nd, 1954, in Kanagawa Prefecture, and currently resides in the port city of Yokohama. Her childhood was ordinary, resembling that of countless other Japanese children in the post-war period. She enjoyed painting, loved singing, was imaginative and sensitive. However, one thing distinguished her from others. Beginning at age 9, she started experiencing visions unlike those of ordinary people. In these visions, an elderly man with silver-white hair, gentle eyes, and a slow, calm voice would often appear beside her, speaking of things yet to come. They would converse in dreams, walking together under moonlight, while the old man whispered of things she would only comprehend years later. The first vision that truly disturbed her occurred in 1976. On a November night, Tatsuki dreamed of a man singing beneath brilliant stage lights, only to suddenly collapse under that blurred and fading illumination. The crowd below gasped in shock, and she immediately recognized the man, Freddie Mercury, Queen's lead vocalist. In 1976, Freddie Mercury was at his career's peak, his health robust, his voice resonating through stadiums worldwide. Predicting his death would have invited public ridicule. Instead of dismissing it, Tatsuki quietly sketched the vision and carefully documented it in her journal. 15 years later, on November 24, 1991, the world was stunned by news of Freddie Mercury's passing. Television broadcasts featured special reports. Newspapers printed his image on front pages. When Tatsuki opened her old journal, she could hardly believe what she saw. It was her first encounter with self-fear, fear that visions were no longer merely dreams. When she turned on the television, what sent a deeper chill through her wasn't the news of Freddie's death itself, but documentary footage showing fans preparing to create a biographical film in his memory. In her 1976 journal was a small frame, a simple drawing of a film crew shooting a scene about a deceased artist. The resemblance was disturbingly accurate. Tatsuki attempted to convince herself it was all uncanny coincidence, but deep down, she knew. Coincidences that perfect are rarely accidental. From that moment, her visions arrived more regularly and materialized according to a strange temporal pattern. Some would unfold 5 years later, some 10, and some exactly 15 years from when they were seen. She began documenting everything, leaving no detail behind. The setting, sounds, colors, names, time, and even emotional sensations that accompanied them. Another vision occurred on August 31st, 1992. She saw herself walking down a long corridor with light streaming through towering windows. At the corridor's end hung a painting of a blonde woman holding a child. The word Diana was written across the canvas. In the next moment came blinding light, the sound of metal crashing, and many people's cries. 5 years later, on August 31st, 1997, the world was again stunned. Princess Diana had died in a car crash in Paris. Once more, Tatsuki's journal had recorded the moment years earlier, captured in simple sketches so vivid they were haunting. From 1995 onward, the prophetic visions became more frequent and began addressing matters of far greater magnitude: natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, and geological upheavals beyond human control. This growing urgency prompted her to create the book the world would one day search for again: The Future I Saw. On a winter night in 1995, Tatsuki again dreamed of the silver-haired old man. In the vision, he led her to a strange land where the ground had split open and the air was thick with choking stone dust. Tatsuki awoke in the middle of the night with an uncanny sense of foreboding. The next morning, she opened her journal and carefully recorded the dream's date: January 2nd, 1995. She then sketched the devastated landscape, and beneath it wrote a single note: "Something will rupture in 15 days." Exactly 15 days later, on January 17th, 1995, the Great Hanshin earthquake, also known as the Kobe earthquake, struck. Nearly 6,500 lives were lost. Tens of thousands of homes collapsed, and Japan, a country built on order and resilience, was left frighteningly exposed to nature's sheer force. In that moment, Tatsuki no longer doubted. She could no longer convince herself that what she witnessed was mere coincidence. She believed with certainty that the future was sending her signals, with conviction that these warnings weren't meant to remain locked within a private journal's pages. Tatsuki began compiling the visions she had documented over many years. She then officially published the manga titled The Future I Saw. What puzzled many was this: immediately after the book's 1999 release, Tatsuki disappeared once again. Perhaps the story would have concluded there had it not been for one more vision. A vision so vivid, so urgent, that it compelled her to break more than 2 decades of silence. On a July night in 2021, Tatsuki awoke with a start. Her breathing was rapid, cold sweat clung to her forehead. She had dreamed of standing alone in a vast field of water, beneath an ash-colored sky where no sunlight shone. The sea south of Japan began to bubble. Then, from the ocean's depths, 2 enormous dragons emerged, twisting and writhing as though tearing at the Earth's crust. Then came an explosion sound, followed by silence as the land was swallowed whole. She realized this vision was a continuation of an older one from 1999, but this time it was far clearer and far more violent. The repetition was impossible to ignore. She could no longer remain silent. So, in 2023, Tatsuki re-released her book in a more complete edition, one that included new visions and, most importantly, a warning about a looming catastrophe that hadn't yet arrived but was drawing ever closer. In that vision, she stood at an immense height, so elevated that she could see the entire expanse of the sea south of Japan spread beneath her like a living 3-dimensional map. Initially, the ocean was unnervingly calm, but within moments, massive air pockets began rising from the ocean floor, bubbling up like enormous cauldrons, churning beneath the Earth's crust. It was the unmistakable sign of an underwater volcano on the verge of eruption. What she could never forget, what had seared itself into her memory, was the emergence of 2 enormous dragons. They twisted beneath the water's surface, gradually forming from the scene's edges. They moved silently, coiling around the center of the rising bubbles, as if guarding something hidden beneath. Then, in an instant, a massive water column burst from the sea, tearing through the sky and unleashing a tsunami beyond anything the human mind could imagine. Tatsuki stood frozen, unable to move, as waves 3 times taller than those of the 2011 disaster came crashing toward shore, dragging clouds of dust, vehicles, buildings, and millions of people. She couldn't remember how she breathed during that vision. All she knew was that after the wave, new land began to rise. It surfaced slowly from the water like an ancient being awakening from a slumber that had lasted thousands of years. Wet soil churned upward, stone heaving into jagged forms, rugged, raw, and untouched. In that moment, Tatsuki knew with certainty that this new land would connect Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the Philippines into one continuous landmass. In chaos, most people think only of endings, but in Tatsuki's vision, the end carried with it a beginning, a new chapter that humanity neither expected nor prepared for, yet could not refuse. What made the vision all the more chilling was this. Tatsuki had seen the exact date it would happen. It was written clearly, 5 a.m., July 5th, 2025. Perhaps she understood that many would doubt her, that some would laugh, dismissing it as superstition. But she also knew this. If among the millions who read these words, only a small number believed and prepared, then if the vision were ever to materialize, the loss might not be as great. To some, Tatsuki's vision was nothing more than excessive anxiety. But to those who had followed her chain of predictions since the 1970s, they understood one thing clearly. What Tatsuki saw in her visions should not be dismissed lightly. So the biggest question following her book's reissue, especially with its stark warning about a new continent in 2025, was this: could such a thing actually happen? The answer, to many people's surprise, is yes. While the probability is low, it remains entirely possible, at least theoretically. Japan lies within a geological region known as the Pacific Ring of Fire, a place where multiple tectonic plates of the Earth's crust converge, and also the area with the world's highest density of underwater volcanoes. These tectonic plates aren't stationary. They shift inch by inch, year by year. They generate earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and occasionally give birth to new land. In 2013, just 500 meters off Japan's Nishinoshima Island coast, an underwater volcano quietly erupted, creating a small island that had never appeared on any map. Within just a few months, its area expanded rapidly, eventually merging with the main island and doubling Nishinoshima's overall size. Another case occurred in 2021 in the Kuril Islands, a contested region between Japan and Russia. There, an underwater volcano suddenly erupted without prior warning. When meteorological experts arrived by helicopter to inspect the site, they discovered that a new island had formed. These events, though modest in scale, served as proof that what Tatsuki described in her visions wasn't entirely implausible. So we return to her vision from 2021, the one in which Tatsuki saw two enormous dragons twisting beneath the sea. If we set aside the symbolic imagery momentarily, many researchers have pointed out a curious detail. The position of the two dragons in Tatsuki's drawings closely matches the location of two major tectonic plates beneath the Pacific Ocean, the Philippine Sea Plate and the Pacific Plate. It is precisely at the intersection of these two plates that the likelihood of underwater volcanic eruption is highest, and if conditions were just right, such an eruption could indeed push the seafloor upward, forming entirely new stretches of land. If there is one vision in life that leaves Tatsuki waking up gasping for breath, not out of terror, but because the sense of loss in that very vision feels all too real, then it is the vision she experienced in the late 1990s. She wrote about it in her journal, but only many years later did she confess that she had never been entirely ready to reveal that vision to the world. Not because she feared disbelief, but because she was terrified that people would be utterly powerless to act upon it. In that vision, a resounding sound erupted from deep within the earth, so powerful that she felt her spine shudder even in sleep. It was a sound reminiscent of an ancient roar, as if the very crust of the earth were cracking open somewhere. She awoke within the vision. The clock before her read exactly 5 o'clock, yet there was no way to tell whether it was 5 o'clock in the morning or afternoon. Tatsuki stepped out of her home, only to find that everything was no longer intact. The roads were shattered. Tall buildings had their lower floors torn apart as though an invisible hand had yanked whole blocks of concrete from the earth. Cars lay askew, canopies collapsed, and power lines flickered like remnants of a city that once thrived. She beheld a grand bridge spanning a river, yet its latter half was gone. Around her was no one. The street before her was desolate. When Tatsuki looked down, she realized she was no longer standing on solid ground. Before her and behind her stretched nothing but water. Then, in the very instant she awoke, she felt as though everything had come to an end. When reissuing The Future I Saw, Tatsuki appended a note beneath this vision. I am not sure whether this scene is that of the 2011 earthquake or not, for what I witnessed was far more horrifying. And I was still wearing a short-sleeved shirt, even though March in Japan is still bitterly cold. That very detail, her wearing a short-sleeved shirt, sent shivers down many spines. For the 2011 tsunami occurred during winter, yet Tatsuki's vision bore elements of summer. And in 2025, what she dreamed indeed unfolds during the summer season. You may not believe in visions. You may even think that the future is something no one can ever truly reach in advance. But if there was anything in this story that made you pause, even for just a moment to think, then feel free to share your thoughts below. I'm always open to reading them and exploring deeper with you into things that have yet to be fully understood. And if you'd like to continue exploring stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I'll see you again in the next video.